My mission begins at the U.S. Army's Fort Gregg Adams, a few hours south of D.C. Once on base, I make my way over to a one-of-a-kind museum, which chronicles the long history of women's service in our military. Tracy?
Hi, Josh. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Welcome to the United States Army Women's Museum.
I am thrilled to be here because I have a lot to learn. And I think a lot of people don't know enough about the Women's Army Corps. So tell me, who were the WACs?
So the WACs were the first women to serve in the Army with full military status.
Okay.
It's an amazing story. But I think to understand the WACs, we need to go back to the beginning, to the American Revolution. So let's head this way.
Let's go all the way back. Come on.
Really, since the birth of the Army in 1775, women have been finding ways to serve.
And so in those early days, how are they serving?
They're serving in very logistical roles, important work for the Army. They're serving as laundresses, they're serving as cooks, as nurses, they're foraging. Then we see a big change around World War I.
Okay.
A great example is the Hello Girls.
The Hello Girls were French-speaking American women brought overseas to help with communications during World War I. It was the first time women had been used in forward service.
That's really going to lay the groundwork for what's going to happen in World War II with our Women's Army Corps.
American woman power is a reserve that can win this war.
The Women's Army Corps was founded in 1942, 5 months after Pearl Harbor, to bolster the war effort by enlisting women to work as cooks, drivers, and offer communications and medical support.
The original call goes out for 1,000 WACs, and over 30,000 women apply.
So right out of the gate, 30,000 women apply to this.
Yes, and the numbers are going to grow exponentially throughout the war.
Seeing these women in these uniforms strikes kind of an emotional note for me. My grandmother, who was British, served in the UK equivalent of this, the Women's Royal Army Corps. And we have this photo of her in uniform. And during the 40s in the UK, she was doing transfusions for soldiers and supporting the war effort.
And the British women were actually an inspiration for what was going to happen in America. And much of the Women's Army Corps was replicated on the service of women like your grandmother.
There we go. Nice work, Grammy. Appreciate it. Grammy, yeah.
Good job, Grammy.
Good job, Grammy. All right, that's amazing. That is incredible to hear. Over the course of the war, 150,000 WACs were stationed all over the world, from Europe to Africa to the Manhattan Project. It was at the Accra Air Base in what is now Ghana that the 18 WACs were stationed before their doomed flight to London.
So Josh, welcome to the archives.
Wow, look at all of this material. This is incredible. This is the official WAC archive of the crash and the women who tragically perished in it. May I?
Yes, please.
So we've got literal headline news here. Army plane 18 WACs lost. 18 WACs missing on plane trip in Africa. Air and surface craft are searching for a missing plane carrying 18 WACs and a crew of 3. The WACs are the first ever reported lost overseas. This must have been a seismic event for the Women's Army Corps.
It really was. It was the largest loss of life for the Women's Army Corps, all in one event. This was national news as well as news in all of the hometowns of these women.
And yet so few people know this story today.
Right, I agree, but we have to remember that there was a lot going on still at this time in the war. So Germany had just surrendered, but we had a big fight left in the Pacific.
With Germany's surrender, the WACs had the opportunity to go home, but many chose to stay on to support a devastated Europe or be redeployed to assignments in the Pacific. The fateful flight in question was scheduled to travel from Accra Base, with refueling and personnel stops in Liberia, Senegal, Morocco, and France before heading to the UK. There were 4 C-47 aircraft leaving the base, but only 3 of them made it. Are these photos of the women from the crash?
Yes, in fact, here we have the majority of Squadron D stationed in Accra.
Wow. So these are all the women that are stationed over there. So presumably the 18 WACs who died in this one crash are in this photo.
Yes.
Wow. So we have here Corporal Velma H. Holden and her colleagues Private Flossie Flannery, that is the greatest name ever, I love that, Doris Cooper, and Frida Friend was on the plane.
Right, so PFC freed a friend and her husband, got married in the States. He ends up being stationed in Accra, and then later she's sent to Accra, so they were there together. And then she was on this plane that ended up crashing on the way to London.
And he found out about it back on the base?
Yes, he did.
Oh, that's just terrible. And her colleague is Helen F. Rizal, who joined the WAC to take the place of a brother, Lieutenant Richard Rizal, a pilot whose plane was shot down off of Italy in '43. So she's serving because she has a brother who's already been lost.
Exactly, so she actually does enlist after her brother is missing in action. So currently, they are both on the MIA register.
Wow. And who's this?
So this is actually Helen Roselle here and Odessa Hollingsworth, two of the women who were killed in the plane crash.
Look at these two women just hanging out on the beach in West Africa. What a cool photo this is.
So they're trailblazers, and
Yeah.
they're women in the Army. They're serving their nation, and they're also on a great adventure.
That's right. And as to this plane, it really just seems like it vanishes off the face of the earth. You look at the news report and it says the plane was last reported over British West Africa about 150 miles west of Accra, and then nothing.
So they had a normal takeoff. They did their first check-in, and then there was a frantic Mayday call.
But in the Mayday, the pilot doesn't say what's happening.
Does not identify the problem. So then a major search and rescue operation is launched, and it goes on for over a week. They send out planes, they send out ships, and they found absolutely nothing. No human remains, no debris. So it is a true mystery.
And a mystery, I hope, that can be solved.
And we hope so too. This is an important story, and we would be very happy to bring resolution and recognition to the service of these women.
To assist in that effort, I travel west. I need to understand what I'm hunting for. By getting my eyes on a C-47, or better yet, flying in one.
All right, Josh, you ready?
Ready as I'm gonna be.
All right, here we go. Clear on two.
That's veteran pilot Mike Nightingale. In the co-pilot seat is Steve Rose. You can't make these names up. In the navigator's seat behind them is me. And we're aboard one of the most famous aircraft models in history, the C-47. Nicknamed the Goonie Bird, almost 10,000 of these were built during World War II. This one rolled off the production line in March of 1945, just 2 months before the crash I'm investigating.
Might be a little bit bumpy, Josh.
Define a little bit. We're in the desert outside of Palm Springs, California. And in a moment, this 25,000-pound antique is hopefully gonna get airborne. Buckle up. Here we go.
All right, 5 to 5. You're up.
Yeah, feel that power. Wow.
Josh, you're free to come on up.
All right, how's it going up here in the pointy end?
Going great, man.
This is absolutely incredible. So I'm looking at the cockpit here. I don't see a lot of computers.
No, this is all pretty fundamental. It's 1936, 1940 technology.
The most powerful computer in this plane is what?
His iPhone.
Oh my God. This plane was a big deal in World War II, yes?
Yeah, without this airplane, we probably would have lost.
Powered by two massive Pratt & Whitney air-cooled engines providing 2,400 horsepower, the C-47 is no puddle jumper. With a wingspan of nearly 100 feet, she could carry 28 fully equipped paratroopers or up to 10,000 pounds of cargo. The C-47 served all over the globe during the war, including at Normandy on D-Day. General Eisenhower himself singled it out as one of our most valuable assets. Now, this plane we're sitting in was delivered just a few months before this accident that I'm investigating in 1945. According to the information we have, they took off from what is now Ghana, from Accra. Do you know this part of the world?
Yeah, so I used to fly in and out of Accra with the airline probably about 10, 15 years ago.
So you've got knowledge of the region, and obviously you're an expert at flying this plane. So any idea what might have caused this crash?
I think I've got an idea of what might have happened.
You do. So you do have an idea. What do you think?
Well, if you take a look out the window, we got two big engines on there. There's a lot of things that can happen with those.
I'm flying in a vintage C-47 over the deserts of Palm Springs, California. a plane nearly identical to this one crashed into the ocean off West Africa in 1945, carrying 18 members of the Women's Army Corps. Now, pilots Mike Nightingale and Steve Rose walk me through what they think could have caused the crash.
Okay, so let's say that you do lose one of those engines. How could that potentially lead to a problem here?
You have an engine failure. One of the things that you do is you start reaching for the feather button. You feather the propeller. You make it go into the wind. The other engine's taking up all the slack.
Feathering the propeller of a dead engine turns the blades parallel to the airflow to reduce drag and help the plane stay in the air. But the feathering control on the C-47 is a bit fickle, and it might have become stuck in its normal position.
And is there a history of that happening on the C-47?
Yeah, it's a known issue that we trained for.
So there's every chance that that could have happened back in 45.
Absolutely.
But the engines are just one potential culprit. A little noticed line in a maintenance report from the day of the doomed flight makes Steve think the landing gear could have played a role in the crash.
Maintenance requested that landing gear handle should be in the up position. What that does, it keeps the hydraulic pressure working to the landing gear.
So the landing gear was sagging and wanting to come down.
Yes.
Setting the lever in this up position would potentially hold it up.
Yes.
The landing gear stuck in the down position would have caused considerable drag on the plane, making it much more difficult to fly. Also, the reality of war meant that pilots were often flying without extensive experience in complex emergency procedures. The fateful flight of the Wax was manned by a good pilot, but one with less than 50 hours behind the stick.
All right, Josh, you ready to start heading back to the airfield?
I'm ready. You need me to fly it, or you got this?
I'll take care of this one.
Okay, you know, whatever. Want to offer.
Now that I know my target, it's time to join the team hunting for the long-lost plane of the Wax. And to do that, the search moves halfway around the planet, to the place where their plane disappeared. I leave Palm Springs and embark on a 19-hour flight from the west coast of the US to the west coast of Africa. Welcome to the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, which translates to Ivory Coast, a moniker that dates back to French and Portuguese traders who once shipped untold tons of ivory from Africa's western shores. 500 years later, the exports have thankfully changed, but business is still booming here in the city of Abidjan. One business in particular dominates the modern economy, and it's pretty sweet. This is the world's largest exporter of cacao, which means if you have ever had a piece of chocolate, odds are it originated from here. It also means that my diet is about to go way off the rails. The local Bushman's Cafe has some of the finest examples of the national product for me to sample.
That's the best thing I've ever eaten. I'm never leaving here. What else do you have? Just keep bringing it. Just bring everything over. Yep, thank you very much. I'll just be right here if you need me.
The chocolate made in Côte d'Ivoire is enjoyed around the world, but if you're looking for some joy that's slightly less caloric, just head to the Marché de Trècheville, Abidjan's busy street market.
Party right now.
As much as I'd love to stay with the flash mob here in the capital, my final destination is quite a ways out of town. So I strap in for a 6-hour drive up the coast to meet a group dedicated to finding the lost C-47.
All right, well, the team preparing to mount a search for the missing plane are old friends, and they're staging their operation near the suspected crash site about 200 miles west of here. Let's rock and roll.
Let's get the motor running. I got places to go.
Outside of Abidjan, the modern cityscape is quickly replaced by a blur of roadside villages, and eventually by nothing but humid jungle.
No matter what it takes, I'll get to you. No ocean too wide, no
Well, welcome to the city of San Pedro. You know, last night I dreamt of San Pedro. Sorry, that's a Madonna song.
The sun rings through my ears, whatever that means, as I find the city's commercial port, where I have a reunion planned with the members of Project Recover.
Hey, Mark, good to see you again.
Good to see you again, too.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah.
Meet Project Recover co-founder Mark Moline, historian Colin Colburn, and underwater archaeologist Drew Pietrusca. Project Recover is a nonprofit group dedicated to searching for missing in action Americans from World War II. I recently worked with them in Micronesia, where in 1944, 42 American planes and over 200 pilots went missing in action. We located a previously lost Japanese Zero aircraft.
Nobody has seen that.
Yeah, until us.
And an American SBD Dauntless that hadn't been seen in nearly 80 years.
The first American aircraft ever located in Truk Lagoon. We can check it off the list.
It was a huge honor to take part in such a historic expedition, which is why I'm back for an equally important mission.
Why do we only meet on remote docks?
I don't know. We're just adding continents as we go.
Yeah, I know. So we got another one here. Welcome to Africa, right? Tell me at least this is going to be an easy mission.
I don't think so. This is not going to be an easy one. This is really uncharted waters here.
How did this case even come on your radar to begin with?
During the pandemic in 2021, I was invited to give a talk to a local Delaware chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and I wanted to see how many women were missing in action. So I started doing research, and I came up with less than 30 names of women who went missing in action during World War II. And then I realized that 18 of those were all listed as West Africa. Dialed in, found out they were all on the exact same plane. So we're looking for more than half of all women missing in action in World War II in one place.
And I just keep marveling at how few people know about this story.
Yeah.
You know, because it is a really significant accident. So in terms of where to look for this plane and these women, what do we know?
I was able to get the accident report, and I managed to get that from the Air Force Archives.
Okay.
And that provided us a lot more information.
You have it.
Down to an X on the map.
A literal X on the map.
A literal X on the map.
Wow, look at this. So this is a copy of the original accident report. It says the plane takes off normally, and then it says no messages were received until 0920 when Roberts Field heard a series of Mayday reports from the aircraft.
Roberts Field in Liberia was the plane's first scheduled stop on its way to the UK, and it was the tower at Roberts that received their Mayday signal.
And a series of Maydays were repeated for a period of 5 minutes on voice with no pause at any time in order to receive an answer. So what, just for 5 minutes they were calling Mayday?
Keying the radio, we don't really know what happened, but 5 minutes in an aircraft emergency is forever.
Right.
It's a long time for them to have been in trouble.
The Mayday signal is received by the team in the radio tower, who uses a signal direction finder to determine the plane's bearing, 109 degrees.
We have a bearing.
Not only do we have the bearing, we also have a map with an eyewitness sighting of the loss.
We have eyewitness sightings.
Yes.
Okay.
Josh, look here.
A literal X on the map, and it's marked where natives saw crash.
Right.
The accident report describes an account from the indigenous people in a coastal village who claimed to witness a plane crashing not far from the bearing line of the C-47. Investigators brought one witness by boat to the site, about a half-mile from a place called Druin Point, where they discovered a mysterious oil slick on the water's surface. But no survivors were found, no bodies recovered. The search was ultimately called off, but the bearing and the eyewitness account will allow us to pick up the trail.
So, seems like we're headed to Druin Point.
Third piece of evidence.
Yeah. Who else has searched here?
Nobody.
Literally nobody since 45.
Not since the war.
I've been all over the world, Josh, and this is one case where we're going somewhere where I have no idea what to expect. There's no recreational divers around here. Nobody's been underwater, knows the conditions, nothing.
Right, forget the wreck. We don't know what's there at all. Nobody dives out here.
No, real mystery.
Back in 1945, there was no infrastructure to mount an underwater search. Even today, we've had to ship in our own scuba tanks and an air compressor to dive. We've also brought in underwater sonar technology that has never been applied here before.
Okay, should we get out there and try and solve the mystery?
Let's do it.
Let's go, come on.
Project Recover has a pair of research vessels waiting to bring us to our search zone. We speed out onto the open ocean, the first team to look for this plane and her vanished passengers in almost 80 years.